Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the morning show. My name's Phil Stephanie. Thanks so much for joining us here at Africam today on these live cameras and live broadcast. Some of you on Facebook, others on YouTube, a lot of you on the Africam website, on Africam Premium. We'll be here for the next hour in total. If anyone is not on Africam Premium, jump across. I'll be here for an hour and we'll go through all photographs, some really interesting highlight videos from the weekend. Some of you may have been watching over the weekend. Some really interesting stuff happened over the weekend. But for now, we're here at Olifants River. It's often a camera I love to start at. I'm not sure which one's my favorite camera, but it's always nice to see what's on the banks of the river. And here we have a beautiful big waterbuck bull. And no surprise, he's got a female by his side. He's in incredible condition. There's also two impalas having a little tussle on the right there in the deep shade. Some baboons in the background. Let's see what else is happening. There have been quite a few hippos in the river. Lots of activity. Let's see if we can find any. Oh, it's definitely looking quite tropical out there. Don't think it rained over the weekend, but the green has definitely settled in, looking very summery. Some more waterbuck across the way there. They all seem to be having a good look at something. I'm not sure what it is on the left-hand side of the bank there. No sign of any hippos yet. I'm sure with the varying water levels, the hippo movements change quite a bit. It's also likely that they found themselves a nice deep spot to just relax after a long night's feeding. We'll keep our eye on the camera and just see what happens. It's quite interesting that those waterbuck haven't stopped moving. They're always looking in on the left there. It's quite an interesting body language to pick up on. It's often what gives predators away. Sometimes antelope will look in a certain direction if they think they've heard or smelt something, and then stay absolutely still like that. And if there is something, for sure they start alarm calling. Although waterbuck themselves don't have a very loud alarm call, it's more of a snort. Just want to keep panning across to the right here. Can't see those impalas anymore. I know they're still there. They're just in a very dark bit of the shadow. Just see the movement. Here they come. They're coming to us. Those are baboons under the tree. On the left there, everyone's feeding on the fig trees. A really great source of food, whether you're a fruit eater or a browser and the leaves fall off the tree. All sorts of animals will feed on them. But no sign of the hippos yet. We'll keep an eye on the cameras. We'll come back later on in the show. Just want to go across to a different camera. Let's go across to Nkora. There was a big elephant bull in front of the camera not too long ago. But as we see regularly, things change all the time, comings and goings. I just wanted to do a scan around, just in case there's any other elephants in the area. That's the call of the yellow-billed hornbill in the background. Bit of a cackle. As well as the go-away birds. And the woodlands kingfisher giving it a good call. Okay, so no one around at the moment. But again, we keep watching. It's always quite interesting coming back to the various cameras throughout the show and see how things change even in this short period of time. We're going to go across to Tembe, where there's definitely lots of action back on the cameras. Last week it was a fair amount of rain and cloud cover, quite a lot of wind, where not much came down to the waterhole, or at least not much stuck around. So here we're back to quite a usual scene. Lots of elephant bulls enjoying the water, enjoying the shade, dust bathing. Another one coming out the back on the right there. Lots of inyala and waterbuck. Just a wonderful scene to just sit back and watch a bit. Let's have a listen to some of the birds and look at the comings and goings. That's a huge bull, second from the right, who's just walking into the thicket. He's got a very large structure. He's got big tusks, as a lot of them do, but his body size is strikingly big. Let's see if he comes around the back, see if we get another view. See, this elephant in the foreground has got a very skewed left tusk. Wow, lots more Nyala females and a male. It's quite interesting to see the grass around the waterhole. Looks to me like it's dried out a little bit. The general area looks drier than it has been. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence, but it's quite interesting to note the level of activity around the waterhole in comparison to last week. That elephant having a good scratch on his leg, using his other leg. Also quite interesting to note that the usual water feeding pipes. The outlet hasn't been working for a while. Often is the case when there has been lots of rain and there's lots of water in the general area. It's not a bad idea to stop the feeding of the water hole, let animals disperse a little bit, giving these sorts of pans a bit of a break. But that hasn't stopped this lot. Look at that beautiful Inyala male. I wonder where that pride of lions is over the weekend. They spent almost every day around the waterhole. Lots of sightings of them at night coming down to drink. So those Inyalas and the waterbuck are understandably always on a bit of edge. I'm sure there's the hint of lion scent in the air all the time around here. But the drive for thirst is great. Wow, look at that big bull come into picture. See him having a smell there on the ground and the droppings. Such an important part of the dynamics of elephant, the sense of smell, really important for communication. See those other two on the left lifting their trunks, just smelling the air, giving them a good idea as to what the mood is of that big bull that's just come in. They seem to be quite happy with each other. As long as they don't get in his way, he'll be okay. I just want to go across to Cat Eye Pan for a different view. We'll come back to Tembe at a later stage. There's a wonderful herd of impala feeding in and around the pan. It's just a great angle that the camera has. Look at that. Everyone's so shiny and great condition. Bit of a breeze blowing there. I'm sure that's quite welcoming. I reckon it's somewhere in the region of 30 degrees today, maybe more. A bit of a breeze, I'm sure, is welcome. See the oxpecker on that impala helping to keep it clean. The impala being very helpful, keeping still. But I'm sure it's very ticklish. Every now and then, shake them off. Quite interested to see how this oxpecker is focusing on those dark patches, the fetlock glands on the legs or the ankles essentially. It's often a place where ticks get attracted to first. Yeah, like that there. That's really quite interesting to see. Often those black patches have roles to play, and one of them is actually that they get hotter there, slightly longer hair as well, and that is one of the spots where ticks will congregate before they get to the hard to reach places. So that oxpecker is quite smart. This impala looks like it's got a very round stomach. Couldn't get a better view. Again, it won't be long before there's lots and lots of baby impalas we've seen in some areas. There's already lots of babies, but she does look pregnant. Loading up on all the good green grass. Just want to move back across to Tembe, where the activity has increased. Numbers have doubled on the Nyala front. It's definitely the place to be. There was a question here with regards to lions' scent and do they smell like bears? No, they don't. They don't smell to us. They don't stink. But to the animals out there that rely heavily on the sense of smell and have a very well-adapted sense of smell, they can pick up the scent of predators quite easily. So they definitely have a particular scent, but it's not a smelly, musky one. The one animal that does out here, well, there's quite a few, but in particular is wild dog. You can often smell them before you see them. But in lion's case, they're a fairly clean animal, as you would think in cats. But if the wind changes and blows from a predator, from a lion onto the waterhole, you'll see that all the animals will pick up that scent. Perfect view of them having a sand bath. Really is a scene of constant movement this morning. There's a big fellow in the back left. Look at the size of those tusks. That's a typical size of a Tembe elephant. And if you look at his body size, he's quite large, but I suspect he's still got quite a bit of growing to do. I reckon he must be maybe in his mid-40s. Let's hope we're all around to see him in his 60s. Quick count. I count 21 elephants. Oh, and a giraffe has joined in on the activity. I just love the concept. On some days you come to the cameras and there's absolutely nothing. One wonders, what are you looking at? Then on a day-to-day, you don't know where to look. There's so much going on. Let's see if that giraffe finds a gap between the elephant movement. Well, it got chased away from that corner. Just going to go across quickly to Rosie's pan. Seeing as there's activity of all sorts going on all over, let's take this opportunity to watch this warthog who's come down for a wallow and also has an oxpecker on its snout. Again, there's a level of tolerance. One can see that the animals let their oxpeckers feed off them. It does obviously help them. But it must get quite irritating when it's drilling into your ear or your eye. What a perfect setup. Jump into the pan, have a little wallow, and as you step out, you can eat. Looks like the warthog's wearing pants. It also looks like a pregnant female. See a very round stomach. Let's hope she's still going to give birth and hasn't lost her piglets. While I was in Botswana last week, there were lots and lots of warthogs with piglets already. Again, something to keep our eyes on. You can hear the call of more oxpeckers. I wonder if there's other animals coming into the waterhole. Let's see if the camera can zoom out a little, just in case something else is coming to the waterhole. It's often one of the first signs to listen out for is those oxpeckers. They do help us find things, especially when walking in the bush. If you hear them, it's always a good idea to have a good look around or go towards the sound if you're looking for big animals. You never know, maybe it's a buffalo. Let's see if the camera pans around a little. Nope, just the warthog. Okay, well, while that warthog's having a good feed there, I just want to go to one of the pictures taken over the last couple of days of a green-backed heron from the Lady Dam. Greg, thanks so much for the snapshot. For those of you that have been watching this bird, it's quite an interesting bird to keep an eye on when it's fishing. So what it does, it actually picks out its own little feathers, often from underneath the main feathers, and puts that on top of the water and uses it as a lure. And as a fish comes and inspects or tries to grab that feather, that's when the green-backed heron strikes. So if you do see this bird moving along the water's edge, keep a lookout for that behavior. And apart from interesting behavior, it's actually quite a beautiful heron. You can just see a little bit of green sticking out under the gray back. But if you get the right light on it, its head is also like deep green. Beautiful bird. There's another photograph I'd like to share with you. And that is of the foam nest frog's nest that we've been seeing. In fact, I think we saw this one being made. And here we can see how it's broken off and fallen apart at the bottom. And those of you that have been watching the shows, you might remember how the process starts. There's a female that gets surrounded by a number of males. They all deposit their share, the female, the eggs, the male, the sperm, and they churn their legs up to form this meringue-like nest. Inside that nest, there'll be the eggs. The eggs will hatch into small tadpoles, and they'll swim around inside there and eventually churn it up so much that the nest starts to break and fall apart, allowing the tadpoles to drop into the waterhole, where they develop and slowly turn themselves into grey tree frogs. It's quite interesting to see the system, the cycle here. And so slowly that the rest of the nest will fall off the tree, and that'll be that. It's quite an interesting step-by-step cycle we've been watching here on the cams. And there's one more shot I'd like to share with you. Just quite an interesting shot of elephants at Naledi Dam. It really just illustrates their playfulness. There's a sibling essentially rolling on the ground and the others trying to jump on top of them. King of the castle style. I'm not sure at what point the one at the bottom got fed up with it, but looks like the youngsters on the top were having a great time. So before we end the first half of the show, I just want to go back quickly to Tembi. And it's quite interesting that the numbers of Inyala seem to stay the same, but there's always comings and going. Definitely a very active morning out here. For those of you not on African Premium, thanks so much for joining us for this half an hour show. For those of you that are, I'm still going to be here for the next 30 minutes. Keep watching the activity. I've also got some really interesting highlights from the weekend I'd like to show you a bit later. Anyone who's not on African Premium, come on over. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow for the show in the afternoon. Just want to go back across to see what that warthog has got up to, taking a little break from feeding back into the water. Kind of reminds me of summers as kids at the swimming pool eating watermelon next to the water's edge. You jump in the pool, jump out, have some watermelon, jump back in the pool, back out, and so on. Spend the whole day doing that. Looks like this warthog is going to be doing exactly that. There's something skulking around in that pile of wood in the back there. I don't know if you can see that movement. Let's keep watching that pile of dead wood. I'm not sure if it's a bird behind it. Maybe there's mongoose. We sometimes see mongoose. Let's see if anything pops out there. Camera is taking a closer look. Really wonderful work by the zoomies. Thanks very much, guys. Not sure what I saw, but there was in that triangular gap on the right, something moved across it. There's two clear calls going on. That constant cackle, that yellow-billed hornbill. There's that thing moving in the triangle again. Don't know if anyone saw that. Maybe it's a mouse. Whatever it is, it's enjoying the shade that log is offering. Ah, there we go. Banded mongoose. Can you see them in the back there? Might even come down for a drink. We often see a family of mongoose around this waterhole, and they move through that pile of wood. I suspect their den's not far away. Let's see if they come out. The warthog looks like it's picked up the scent of something. It's pushing its nose up into the breeze. Clearly nothing to worry about. I want to just wait at this camera for a bit, if that's okay. I just want to see if these mongoose come out. They might be just resting in the shade there, but they could come down for a drink. No, warthogs had enough of that open area. Take a break in the shade. Doesn't look like those mongoose are going to come out anytime soon. I just want to see if the camera can pan out a little bit. Just want to make sure nothing new has come to the water. Not unusual for that warthog just to make an ad hoc decision to move off, but maybe something came along. It's always good to double check in the bush. Anything can happen. No sneaky leopard arriving. Wishful thinking. Okay, but what has arrived, what can be, is a whole lot more giraffe. I don't think they've managed to find a gap between the elephants to have a drink. I'm sure they'll get their chance. But they certainly seem to be dominating the waterhole today. Oh, getting stuck around. Brilliant. One under the tree having a good old scratch. You'll find that they most likely spent the evening in the cooler hours of the day feeding. So they can afford to come and spend a couple of hours in the middle of the day, the heat of the day, here at the waterhole, doing everything else they need to do. And then towards maybe 4 o'clock or so, as things cool off, we'll start heading back into the woodlands to get those calories in. That'll be the time for these giraffe to come and have a drink. In the meantime, they'll be getting a lot of moisture from those acacia leaves, other leaves that they've been feeding on. But they will need to come down for a good drink at some point. We're going to go across to a different camera now, just to have a look around. Completely different scene. The tower. The lawn. It's going to be interesting to see how long this lasts. Come April next year, depending on the rains. But I'm sure it'll go brown again and dusty like we've known it through the winter months. But now it's just incredible, this blanket of green. Lots of water in the waterhole. Certainly changed the dynamics around the waterhole. Let's just let the camera pan, just see what the activity, what's happening here today. can see there's still some rain clouds in the sky. I think this area has had some of the highest rainfall out of all of them. I think there's more forecast for next week. Just slowly panning through. The really good part of having not too much traffic going through this area is that it gives it time to recover. So that open space there in the winter months is often full of zebra, wildebeest, waterbuck, impala, buffalo come down, elephants. They'll be squashing the soil, taking a lot of the oxygen out of the soil, and therefore very little is able to grow there on a constant basis. Now, after the rains, the ground's been softened. The grasses and shrubs and various wild herbs can come through there, and their root systems will slowly break open that soil again, allowing new oxygen to fill in the gaps. There's obviously a whole lot of droppings and manure that gets deposited into the ground over the years. So there is lots of nutrients, and that's part of the system. It'll keep it going forever, essentially, as long as nothing drastic changes. But having these weeks or days of relative quiet is really good for the system that surrounds these waterholes. There is a big herd of impala in the background there. There's also some African spoonbills having a good feed in the foreground. Not sure if that's a wildebeest on its own. Yeah, that's a wildebeest on the right there, the territorial bull, waiting for the females to be attracted to his territory. Shouldn't really have a problem. It's good feeding, lots of water. You'll just have to be patient. There's some Egyptian geese. A wonderful herd of impala. Beautiful contrast in color. Looks like mostly males. Those impalas. There's one or two females on the right, but lots of them, some with small horns, others with slightly bigger horns. But there are some females mixed in there. No babies yet. I would say towards the end of this month, we can expect to see lots of impala babies. Okay. I'm going to cross back over to Rosie's pan. It really does seem like there's lots to choose from today. And again, those of you that watch the cameras on a regular basis or join us for the shows on a daily basis, really is quite interesting how some days there's not much in the way of big mammal activity. There's always birds and always beautiful things to look at, but sometimes not so much activity. But today it seems like everybody's out. I'm not too sure if that one warthog we were watching has brought out its mate or if these are two new warthogs. But either way, it seems to be a popular place to be as a warthog. It does look like a male on the left. He's got the big warts under his eyes. Some of you might remember that that's one of the differences between male and female. And the males will have that wart under their eyes to protect their eyes when they fight. There's a question here from Paul with regards to how do you age a warthog? It's actually really tricky once they get to that sort of adult age and you don't watch them grow up. I'd suspect that that warthog on the left, the big male, probably somewhere around the age group of about 5. Really tricky to tell, and that's also an adult female on the right of a similar age. But often the antelope or the prey species, it's quite tricky to determine their ages. It's a bit easier in things like rhinos and elephants and buffalo that have a horn growth. But even that's not that easy to get a really accurate age group apart from being either juvenile, subadult, or adult. Obviously, as an animal gets really old and you can see the loss of condition, and you start pushing it towards their maximum age or longevity. Seems like those warthogs have the waterhole to themselves. Gonna cross over to Naledi. Don't often see much going on at Naledi these days. It's nice to see a perfect view of an impala ram being irritated by 2 oxpeckers also seems to be a bit of a theme for today's show. The oxpecker in the ear. You see that one is also going to the back legs. Let's watch it and see if it spends a bit more time down at those fetlock glands or those black patches on the ankle. I'm not so sure I'd be able to tolerate that oxpecker digging into my ear. I guess if it was pulling out ticks, I would. Here's the next in line. I'm not sure if there's anything left in there. Better check the other one. While the oxpeckers are busy cleaning up the impala, you can see the impala is constantly chewing. So they're exactly the same when it comes to digestive system as a cow or any split-hoofed, ungulate, even-toed animal. They've got 4 chambers in one stomach, so it's regurgitating the cud and chewing it and then re-swallow it. And it's the beginning stage of a really functional digestive system. You look at the droppings of the impala, they're really small. The most obvious example, actually a better example, is that of giraffe that has such a big body, but these puny little pellets. He's just swallowed one bit of chewed cud and regurgitating the next. Machine-like. So he'll do that for the next little while until that rumen is empty, and then he'll head off and feed again, fill it up with grass, maybe have a drink. Let's see if the camera can pan out a little bit, see if he's got any buddies. It's quite unusual to see him on his own. Or should I say quite a dangerous position to be in. Let's see if he's got any mates. Safety in numbers is always a good idea. gives us a different perspective. He does seem to be on his own. Oh no, there's some buddies. Also just lying down, chewing the cud. No rush in the day, especially when it's hot. There's some interesting highlight videos I'd like to share with you while these impala are taking a bit of time off. Some of you might have seen this, I guess, action of a different kind. And it's a wonderful scene, or quite an interesting scene. I'm not so sure, but wonderful. But here we have a waterbuck actually trying to give birth. You can see her back is slightly arched, her tail is up. It's not that clear to see exactly what's going on there, but I have another clip to show you that does illustrate quite clearly that she's actually in labor. And worrying for her, there's also a crocodile in the foreground. You can just see it there. Now, it's quite interesting that that croc has been with her all this time. There's some other clips showing the croc's arrival. It's obviously picked up on the scent. And we can actually see, if we speed it up just a little bit, we'll speed the clip up just a bit, how the croc comes out the water, tries to move towards the waterbuck. The waterbuck knows it's there. Might be in the other clip where the croc comes out, but just look at that body language. See her nose opening up. She can pick out, in this case, the scent of that crocodile, the danger. Remember, it's completely dark. So she knows that there's a bit of a problem there. And for the crocodile, he knows that there's a potential meal. Just going to cross over to the next slide, the next piece of video, and you can see here the croc has moved, positioned slightly. The waterbuck still standing there, essentially waiting for the process to take place. But here goes the crocodile. Just have a look at this. Not a very big crocodile. Definitely senses there's potential for an easy meal. Have a listen to the waterbuck's alarm call as the croc goes out. And if you heard that little snort, it's quite unusual to hear waterbuck alarm calling. That was too close for comfort. But you see, she's not going too far. But really interesting. And then there's one last clip I'd like to show you in this sequence. We haven't actually seen the birth yet. I'm not sure it's actually going to happen. Here she is. During the day, so we can see quite clearly. You can see there's a protrusion at the back of her body there. It's still standing really still. Now sometimes the unborn calf comes out in a strange position, all four legs at once, or sometimes it's taken too long to give birth and essentially it's a stillborn. Not always. But that's what this looks like to me. There's the head of the waterbuck calf. But we have to keep an eye on whether she actually manages to go through the whole process with a good outcome. But it's quite likely that could be a stillborn. And that would explain why she's taken such a long time, because typically once it gets to this point, when the head's essentially out, it's quite a quick process. But this does confirm what we saw at night, that she's actually in labor, and that crocodile picked up on that. So it's not always the nicest thing to have a look at, but it, in this particular situation, but it is a really good example of the natural cycles that take place. So we can just hope that there is actually a good result. So keep watching the cameras. You never know. Maybe we'll see her walking around with her this summer's birth. So we've crossed back over to Tau, and another star of the highlight video, the baddie, the poor old crocodile. I don't think he minds though. He seems to lie there as though he doesn't have a care in the world. Haven't actually seen them for a while. Hasn't been as regular as when the waterhole is dry. Probably not such a good time for the crocodile. Previously we were watching how they were quite successfully catching catfish. But so it is quite nice to see them out again. Regardless of how they're thought of, they are quite an impressive animal. There's one or two more pictures I'd like to share with you before we end the show today. Those will be scenic shots. As usual, we try and pick out some of the nice scenery that you, the Africam community, take snapshots of. And here's a wonderful shot of the rising sun at Naledi Dam. Just a perfect image. There's another shot, this time of the moon. We've had full moon out at this time of the month, and here's a wonderful nighttime shot of the rising moon. Folks, we've come to the end of the show again today. There's one more shot I'd like to leave you with by Julie Cat Lover. Thanks so much for the sunset, and thanks so much for joining us today. Definitely a very active day out at the waterholes. As usual, I only encourage you, if you have the time, to keep watching. You never know. Especially, who knows, maybe we see that waterbuck with its baby. That would be a great result. Have a great day further, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow on the afternoon show in the Hyde. See you tomorrow.